There's a number the Pentagon has carefully avoided placing inside a press release, avoided repeating in a congressional hearing, and avoided allowing any senior commander to speak aloud on camera. That number is 12 missiles out of a total of 350. At 03:47 local time over the Persian Gulf, 350 Iranian drones and ballistic missiles were launched almost simultaneously. Of those, 338 were intercepted, destroyed, or malfunctioned before impact. On paper, the American Missile Defense Network performed at a 96.6% success rate, and yet 12 made it through. Those 12 missiles struck the Ghawar oil stabilization complex, triggering a thermal surge so intense that satellite imaging briefly lost visual clarity. 47 people were killed. The largest oil processing facility on Earth was engulfed in fire. The real question is not why 338 were stopped. The real question is how 12 penetrated a layered defense architecture valued at nearly $2 trillion. The answer to that question alters the strategic calculations of every military power watching. And it is not the version publicly offered. To understand what happened that morning, you have to understand what the United States believed about its own shield. 14 months earlier, in a congressional hearing room, a senior defense architect presented a figure, a 98% interception success rate in controlled tests. The system was described as seamless, anticipatory, and effectively impenetrable. 2 decades of development, roughly $200 billion in layered integration. Patriot PAC-3 batteries designed for precision hit-to-kill engagements. Terminal high-altitude area defense interceptors built to eliminate ballistic threats at high altitude. Aegis combat system destroyers capable of tracking objects at extraordinary range. All of it networked in real time. All of it stress-tested in simulations. All of it presented to lawmakers as a structural guarantee on the modern battlefield. It was not described as a probability. It was described as a wall. At 03:47, that wall did not collapse under brute force. It was methodically dissected. The first layer of the attack did not involve a missile at all. It began with electronic shaping of the environment. For 11 days prior, Iranian fast attack naval vessels conducted what appeared to be routine signal activity in the southern Gulf. It was not routine. It was calibration. Low-power pulses mapped response times, radar frequencies, and detection tolerances without crossing alert thresholds. 40 minutes before the launch window, full-power adaptive GPS interference blanketed targeted bands across the northern Gulf. This was not indiscriminate noise. It was precise degradation. Systems were not blinded. They were made slightly inaccurate. Milliseconds of recalculation entered guidance solutions, where milliseconds determined intercept viability. That was the first incision. The second layer appeared as saturation. All 350 aerial platforms launched within an 18-second window. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones. The objective was not deception alone. It was computational overload. During a critical 20-second interval, genuine hostile tracks were surrounded by dozens of fabricated radar returns that replicated authentic cross-sections. The defense network did not misidentify the threat. It struggled to prioritize it. Processing capacity spiked. Target queues backed up. In the brief congestion between engagement cycles, 12 high-velocity tracks passed through coverage seams. The third layer operated quietly inside software that no one considered a battlefield vulnerability. Forensic review later identified dormant malware embedded in logistics management updates used by certain Patriot operators. The intrusion did not compromise fire control radars. Instead, it altered readiness displays. Interceptor inventories appeared full when physical stocks were partially depleted. Allocation decisions were made on flawed data. Electronic interference, radar saturation, and logistical distortion were not separate failures. They were synchronized components of a single design. There was also a human dimension that official summaries rarely emphasize. During peak engagement, an officer faced inconsistent telemetry that simulation training had never replicated. Faced with contradictory signatures, he paused for seconds that felt insignificant but were operationally decisive. 4 inbound tracks were not engaged in time. That hesitation was not incompetence. It was a doctrine gap exposed under stress. Within hours, a second wave targeted regional installations, including Al-Assad Air Base. Interceptor reserves across the Gulf theater fell by roughly 40% over 2 engagements. What had been considered abundant capacity was revealed to be finite and exhaustible. Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group received orders to reposition toward the Arabian Sea after threat assessments reevaluated Iranian anti-ship missile capability from theoretical to demonstrated. In deterrence language, repositioning carries meaning. Observers in Beijing, Moscow, and elsewhere understood it immediately. Energy markets reacted before diplomatic statements were finalized. Futures pricing shifted on the assumption that infrastructure within a 2,000-kilometer strike radius had entered a new risk category. Inside the Pentagon, investigative teams debated primacy. Some pointed to electronic warfare. Others emphasized cyber infiltration. Others focused on human response latency. The uncomfortable conclusion was that each factor amplified the others. The architecture functioned within design limits. The design envelope itself had been outpaced. The system had been built to defeat missiles through force. It had not been engineered to defend against coordinated cognitive and electronic confusion. Emergency patches followed. Yet trust inside the crews did not instantly return. Operators began double-checking automated outputs, extending engagement cycles that had once been near instantaneous. Software can be updated overnight. Confidence cannot. The larger strategic consequence is not the 12 impacts alone. It is the realization that complexity itself can be targeted. When layered networks depend on precise synchronization, introducing marginal distortion at multiple nodes can create exploitable seams. In the days following the strike, operational lessons circulated rapidly through allied and proxy channels. The cost threshold had been measured. The methodology had been demonstrated. The blueprint was no longer theoretical. The shield was not shattered by overwhelming power. It was examined, tested, and methodically probed until its stress points were identified. 12 missiles did not destroy a $2 trillion defense system. They revealed its assumptions. And once assumptions are exposed, every actor watching begins calculating where the next seam might be.